technology shows involved.
Chance is the one that'll show up 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Bob.
There's Mark.
Beat this in.
He took his chair away.
Is Rick still in? They took your chair away. Is Rick still in Florida? Is Andrew gonna come?
Ready? All rise, and I will lead us in an invocation, followed by the allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you once again for this opportunity to come together as a city council and as concerned members of the public and city staff. We pray that as we consider the things that we have before us this evening, that we would make the decisions that would be in your will and that would be to the benefit of the most number of people in this community as possible. We always pray for our troops overseas and for our first responders here at home that take care of things in the middle of the day and the middle of the night so that we can all remain safe in our homes and free in our country. And we pray all these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll.
Alderman Curry. Alderman Moody. Alderman Austin.
Here.
Alderman Jackson. Alderman Pittman.
Here.
Alderman McCullough.
Here.
Alderman Stratton.
Here.
Alderman Glad.
First on our agenda tonight, we have the consideration of minutes from June the 11th, 2024, and I'd entertain any amendments or other considerations regarding the minutes at this time. Entertain a motion to approve the
So
minutes.
moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to our committee and commission reports, which first we have Budget and Finance chaired by Mr. W.
No items under old business. Under new business, we have presentation of audit fiscal year 3 by Kerber Reckel, and we have Amber and Anna here with us tonight.
Hi guys. Me. Should be a familiar face by this point, but I'm Anna Hall with KEB. I'm here to present the results of your 2023 audit. For our communication, I have to disclose to you. I've got some things I want to disclose to you, but other than that, if you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to interrupt and ask me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if I can't answer it, get back to you with an answer. So, first and foremost, it's important to understand that the financial statements are management's responsibility. They're responsible for presenting them accurately. They're responsible for designing, maintaining, and implementing good processes and procedures to do that. My responsibility as your auditor is to give an opinion on the financial statements. So my opinion lets users of the financial statements know that they can reasonably rely on the information. And the reason I say reasonable and not absolute is I don't test every single transaction. That would be a very long, intensive, expensive audit. But I do test the areas that I consider most at risk. We do a formal risk assessment at the beginning of the audit. We look at your processes and procedures, but we're not giving an opinion on those. We do use that information to kind of expand our testing in certain areas and know what we want to look at. For the FY 2023 audit, I did issue an unmodified opinion. That's accounting terminology for a clean opinion. It means our opinion was not modified for any reason. Any questions on that? It's the highest opinion we can give, and it does let users know that we are saying that this information is good. This year is a little bit different. We had a couple extra reporting requirements for you. As you are, I'm sure, are aware, you received a lot of federal funding over the last few years. And when you spend based on expenditures, but when you spend at least $750,000 in federal dollars, that does trigger what's called a single audit under uniform guidance. The single audit is a little more intense than a regular financial audit. We're not only testing source documents, but we're testing your processes and procedures, your internal controls, ensuring that you had good internal controls over the expenditure of that federal money. You spent about $1.8 million in the fiscal year 2023. Then the guidance has us select from that $1.8 million what's a major program to you. About $950,000 of that was spent on the project for the water towers. So that is the program that we were able to test to get enough coverage to issue your single audit. We did not have any in the single audit. We don't have any findings or weaknesses noted there. So any questions on that? You'll see that in your financial statement. That's an extra 2 letters in the back of the report. There's also a listing of all the federal funding received. I don't think you have that in front of you today, but if you look at your full financial statements, that is where that is at. Okay. The audit itself went really great. Like I always mention out here, we receive full access to the books and records. The management is very timely in giving us information when we request it. I feel like they're very cooperative. It's a good group to work with. I am required to let you know if there's any audit adjustments or any past audit adjustments, something that we would propose to management and they would refuse to make. There were no past adjustments. We did have one adjustment to capital assets, and I'd like to explain the assets were expensed under the modified cash basis of accounting. You expense your capital assets when purchased in the fund financial statements. They were there, they were recorded, but then when you move to your government-wide presentation, we list those as capital assets like you would on a normal financial statement, and we take depreciation on those. So a few assets didn't make it to that formal listing. It's good practice to make sure all of those make it there for not only tracking purposes, but insurance purposes too. So there was a few things that didn't make it to that listing. We came in and recommended adding that in. It was about $48,000 in capital assets. Any questions on that? Okay. If you want to slide over to the financial tab.
Anna, could you give me an example of what one of them?
Salt spreader, lawnmower. There was a couple of printers, server IDs, stuff.
Okay.
Like I said, it was all recorded and paid for in the fund financial statements, but it didn't make it to the formal listing of assets.
So there was a multitude of things. It wasn't like 1 or 2
Correct.
larger purchases. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing too, before we flip to the financials, we had to do a compliance audit of your TIF district this year. That is new. You've had the TIF for a couple of years, but you got to the point where you had received over $100,000 in funds coming into that fund. So that triggered a compliance audit. So you should have one of those now going forward each year. Okay. And there was no findings on that. So I'm just going to hit a few financial highlights. That's the third tab in the looking at. I'm just going to touch on page 7. So this is your statement of net position. This is the entire entity. Your governmental activities is in the first column. That's your general fund, your motor fuel tax fund, your TIF funds, your business type activities, your water and sewer. And then over on the right hand is your component unit, the library. Just overall, your total assets for all funds, including the business type and governmental, are at $30 million. That includes your capital assets. Those are on the books at cost less an estimated depreciation. So we have those at $19 million. You have liabilities outstanding of just under $12 million. So your net position for the government is $18,031,000, and this is as of December 31st, 2023. If you want to flip on to page 11, what's going on with the government, by how things have changed from one year to the next. Your general fund is kind of your catch-all fund for all things that aren't restricted or special revenue funds. So looking at your general fund 2023 activity compared to 2022, your total revenues were $6,992,000. You'll see a big drop there was grant revenue. So we talked about the grant revenue earlier. You received a lot of that in the prior year, but didn't spend it until 23. And then your expenditures were $6,058,000. That was up a little bit from the prior year. You are now expending the grant revenue, if that makes sense to you. So your excess over expenditures was $933,000. You factor in your other financing sources. There was some capital appreciation on the fair value of your investments, and you transfer some funds to your water sewer fund. So your net change in the governmental general fund was $533,000 for the fiscal year 2023, as compared to 1.4 of the prior year. But again, you've got grant funds coming in 22 and going out in 23, so it's a timing thing. Any questions on that? Then the last thing I wanted to cover is our recommendations. Those of you that have been here and heard me before know what I'm going to talk to you about, but this year I just want to reiterate it a little bit more firm to you. Audits for 18 years, and last year I actually had for the first time 2 governments that had fraud and were discovered during the audit process. So in both of those cases it was in the disbursements, and I just want to mention to you because I'm of the opinion that had their board paid attention to some of the information that was presented to them, it would have been caught much sooner than in the audit process. I do think out here, from just coming to meetings and reading your board minutes, you are a very involved board. I encourage you to stay that way. Question the disbursements. As long as you have honest people in place, it won't be an issue. But in this case, both boards thought they had honest employees in place.
I don't know if Sandra told you or not, we are doing some cross-training back and forth to try to alleviate some of that. I don't know if she told you that or not during the audit.
She might have, but she didn't.
We've just started that this calendar year, and we've been meeting with the admin staff and the water staff there, and it's a slow process to teach someone across the hall how to do what you've done for years.
Yes.
But I do want you to know that some of that is being addressed now. Sandra and I started that this year.
That's good. Yeah, and I'll say that.
I don't know if you guys know that either.
So the one instance, actually management brought it to our attention, they had a changeover in management. So somebody new came in and they were questioning the way a process is done and asked us to look into it, and they were right. So sometimes it just takes another person there looking at it. So with that being said, you guys do have some segregation of duties issues. It sounds like you're looking at it. You're a very involved board. You've got a CPA that's also looking at things. So I'm not saying it's going to happen to you. I'm just required to let you know that there are some segregation of duties issues. And hindsight is 20/20. So some of my boards have learned the hard way that it does happen. Any questions?
Nope. As always, and thanks Scott and Sandra and department heads for making it as easy on you guys as possible, but I feel like we always get a quality product from our audit. Appreciate the work you guys do.
Thank you.
All right, next item under new business is consideration of change order number 3 for the ARPA project.
Do we need a motion to accept the
So we
audit?
do need a motion. Honestly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we have consideration of the ARPA project. have a change order in here, but I don't know much about it.
Looks like it's a total of $11,910. Typically, we would look at Harold at this
Right.
point, and he'd say, yeah, this is normal and everything's fine, but,
Pay extra money.
right, but obviously, he's not here this evening, so I have no reason to believe
That
that.
it would- And a second from Don, all in favor? Aye. And then the item right behind that is consideration of pay request number 6 for the ARPA project. So then you've got,
I believe this is in the amount of $572,000.
no,
88,000.
The original cost was 572, and I believe we paid.
Okay.
Okay, motion.
We have a motion from Gary. We have a second.
Second.
A second from Barb, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion will carry. And then next item is consideration of accounts payable registers. We have one from last week, and then we have an additional one.
Yeah. On the night, Elizabeth, if I can find it on,
Page 1 of
the,
register, 836.
with, you with it?
It was $593.88. It looks like a reimburse for damaged glasses at fire.
Oh,
or general.
yeah, he,
Oh, that was,
lost a pair of
that was
prescription
Murphy.
glasses at a fire scene. They fell off, they were
They
either
got
run over or stepped on. And so we, for the contract, we replaced them. Then
I
Barb
found them 2
them in
days
the
later.
driveway later and repaired them as best she could, so they kind of.
He's repaired.
He got a
He has a
back.
backup pair now.
That's
That's one question I had. I just
Anybody else
wanted
have any questions regarding the bill?
to make a motion to pay the bill.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Bills are paid, motion carried. Next, prepared by Scott Evans, Budget Officer.
Thank you, WJ. Before I get into my report, while I have the bullet folder for a minute, I do want to address that issue about the financial statement adjustment. I don't put a lot of weight on that one because it only affects like one page on this report, whereas the day-to-day accounting. So, that same report that they list assets on, when they first had to put that in there 6-7 years ago by the accounting standards changing, they did that themselves for the first couple of years. And they were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, the client should do this. Well, when they first established that report with all these assets of this building and the other buildings, they used some really, really rounded numbers at the time. So to say that that report is actually 100% accurate, whether that 48,000 is in there or not is kind of a stretch. So I just want to put that in perspective. Technically, they are right, but I don't know how accurate that is when, they say this building was 200,000 even or something like that, and
Right.
that's,
Well, I feel like you provide numbers often enough that we've got a pretty good grasp.
yeah. And we were showing ourselves being in a more conservative position than they are. They're actually saying, well, no, you guys are richer than you think you are, so, okay. Whatever, but, it's tomato. But I want to kind of put that in perspective and let's explain what that really is. Anyhow, so that's all about that. My reports tonight, I have 4. So I have the income tax report for the month. So we did squeak out a win a year ago this month by about $1,000 or so. And so that continues. The first 6 months this year, we've beaten last year's number on that line. So, and again, it's not like we're doing anything to effectuate that, but that being said, we should be able to exceed the $1,108,000 budget number, maybe by $100,000 or whatever, we'll see. But I don't believe that's going to just fall off a cliff in one of these 6 months. It may go down, but we have a good enough cushion built in above where we thought we'd be, that I don't feel like we're gonna miss that by much if we even do. We may exceed the budget, so. Anyway, so another good month there. The healthcare report, so that was through the first 5 months, because I prepared this in June, so we didn't have all of June's done yet. So for the month of May, citywide, we spent $51,753 in total healthcare costs. So our year-to-date through those 5 months is $269,000 between general fund and water sewer. And we should, and unless we have, again, some calamities the next 7 months there, we should be in fine shape going into the end of the year. We had a couple months there where our HRA was a little higher than we would normally average, but May was we spent $11,752, so that actually was more in line with what an average month would be. So
Where are we in comparison to this time last year on the HRA?
well, I have that information, but not with me.
Well, Scott, you mean you can't just get that on top of your head, honey? Is it?
We're a little ahead. I mean,
Yeah,
last year was
it
kind of an
seemed like it-
exceptionally low year.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it
I
seemed like
think-
this is higher,
I
but,
think last year we ended the year probably about 26 or 27% what the maximum could have been,
okay,
which historically it's probably around 32, 33%, so that was low. I think we're just maybe at or just a hair above the average this year. So, and typically your first 5 or 6 months of the year are going to be more, as people kind of max things out in those months. You see that kind of drop off a little bit typically, not always, but so we feel very good about our prospects going forward. It continues to be a really good way to balance giving people, good health care and not breaking the bank doing it.
yeah.
And so that's what we like to see. So, that's where we are on that. And then I haven't showed you these other 2 reports since probably the end of the year. So, this is just a snapshot of what we owe to the outside world as a city. First in the general fund, so we still have active loans there. We had the education equipment at $11,000 and change. We have the F-250 that was bought a couple years ago. Balance is down 23.4. The digital radio equipment is down 45,000, and then the skid steer, which we just bought. And at the time of this report, we hadn't yet made a payment, so but I think we've made one now. So we owe $185,000, almost $186,000 to outside creditors in the general fund. And of course, as you can see, again, the water sewer fund is always the fund that keeps me up at night, if you want to say that, because we always have so many infrastructure needs there and type things. So we have eight different loans there now, the 2 biggies there. I am happy to say though that in May, when we made the payment on the sewer plant, we dropped below the $10 million mark. So that's a milestone, I guess, if no emotional anyway, if not a real financial milestone. And we dropped below $1 million on the Walnut Street water replacement line. So those are progressing nicely. And again, we have such a low interest rate on those. That's why you're seeing those drop pretty fast there. So we do have 3 trucks that we're financing. So there's the balances on those, 8, 11, and 27. The Vector truck is still at 116. And that's just barely a year old on that loan. So that explains that. The backhoe and the excavator, which we purchased early this year in February, still owe $184,000. And then, of course, even though we got a $500,000 of loan forgiveness on the water tower project, we still owe the $500,000. Although now, after one payment, it's less than $500,000. It's $488,000. So, water sewer fund owes $11,364,000 to the outside world as of May 31st. So, that's where we are on those. The audit report or anything like that.
Thank you, Scott. All right. Next item is consideration of writing off closed water sewer accounts from 2009 to 2013.
So, I guess, or Captain, do you have any report to give? So, we did this, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. What happens is, over time, you know, these small balances and old balances and stuff that have exceeded the 10 statute of limitations, they basically clog up the system, and there's just, you know, it doesn't make sense to keep all those around. So periodically we recommend writing off those. And I don't know how many accounts this represents, but I mean, it's a fair number. And I think the total balance is around $49,000, something like that. But it's probably, I mean, I would say at least a couple hundred accounts, probably. I thought I saw that one time, but I don't. And so essentially, I think Sandra had the list of the names and the amounts available. If anybody wanted to see who all was on that list or whatever, that was available. But like we did 4 or 5 years ago, we're asking you to write all these old uncollectible accounts off of our books from 2009 to 2013, which would be back up to the 10-year mark.
The amount was $49,888.64.
Just under 50, yep.
And that's just in amounts billed that were never collected, correct?
And if we did collect it, you could still collect, I mean, you could still,
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could, if
yeah.
you could get somebody to pay it.
There's, I doubt
take the
there.
money.
It seems to me it was close to 80,000 that we did 5 years ago.
Yes, because I think
Because we had
more years.
Yeah, hadn't
And
done.
now we've got it down to like a 5-year block
Yeah,
that we're doing
which
with
is
that, so,
a lot better.
yeah.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Garrett, Alderman McComb. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, aye. Motion carries. Next item is consideration of water sewer guarantee checks to the state.
That's me again.
All of our
So-
checks are outstanding. We don't do any mediocre ones.
All
we
of
do.
them are outstanding.
Yes, right. So, in the past years, but I guess it didn't rise to the level of bother us with it again. Especially in the water sewer guarantee fund. You know, I reconcile that account every month, and there's probably 6 pages of outstanding checks that have accumulated over time. And some of them are $1, some of them are $187, you know, just a hodgepodge. And so what the state says is, after a certain period of time, you can't keep those on your books and just keep that money. You gotta give it to us so we can put it in the cash dash program. So what we're asking for is simply to say, you know, what we want to do is we have a list, and there's like $17,580.94, which gets us everything up to 2021. We essentially will, you know, cut a check to the state for that amount, and we'll clear all those old outstanding checks off of our system. You know, we had taken that cash out of our book number over the years, so it's not like we're going to $1,000 hit to our book number for cash. We've already deducted that over the years.
So does then that go to like an unclaimed funds section from the state that an
It does.
individual could apply for that?
Yep. So, you know, from their standpoint, they're thinking, okay, you guys have, you know, not shown that $17,000 in your cash on paper all these years, but it's been in your account all these years, and it really is not your money. You should be given that way. So
We have to do quite often also,
So we have talked about this for at least a year, and we're doing it. So this gets us up. So that, again, we're not, and the water billing staff, they are going to look through that list, and if there happens to be anybody on that list that actually still has a balance due or something like that, that would just be a matter of transferring that amount over to extinguish that amount not due, then we're gonna do that. So the actual amount we write a check for to the state could be less than that.
What is the amount?
$17,580.94.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Alderman McComb. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in opposed? That motion will carry. Next is consideration of increasing the downtown TIF program budget. And Willie, I think you and I talked about this briefly, but it's just more than we've anticipated, I believe, and that's a good thing. Do you want to explain a little bit more what we're...
Well, when we revamped the program, we set an annual budget of $50,000, but a part of that $50,000 this year was sort of making whole previous TIF agreements that had not really produced any financial result under the old structure of the TIF program. And so we've gotten a couple of additional applications that we think are pretty good applications, and we would like to go ahead and approve those, but we really can't do it under our current budgetary restrictions. Scott, do you think I've explained that well enough?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And just to give council a little more background again, I'll remind them what a lot of this has stemmed from as far as us revamping the program is that, I guess we were under the impression that just like the TIF district at the hotel, all this money was going to flow in once these properties were reassessed, because it clearly has down there, because you have a barren piece of ground and then you have a $10 million hotel. So, obviously the assessment has gone way up on that property, and therefore that TIF money has really flowed in. And of course, we're paying a lot of that back to Joe as part of our agreement. But what we ran into was that when people sign up for these agreements, maybe the work that they were doing was inside to renovate. I'll use the ice cream shop, for instance. So they did a lot of work inside, a little bit outside, but the assessor doesn't necessarily up the assessment when you do that. So the money we thought that was going to be there from them reassessing it really didn't materialize, because it wasn't going from bare ground to a new building. It was just renovating an older building, and maybe it was for the roof, maybe it was for HVAC and those kind of things. And the assessor doesn't necessarily increase assessments based on those things. Those are kind of routine maintenance items, and so we were not getting the money into that program based on their higher assessments that we thought. So we thought, let's find a new mechanism to help recoup the cost of these people that, in good faith, made investments thinking that we were going to be on board. And now we're, as Will said, we're wanting to kind of revise that a little bit upwardly.
Is there a motion? We have a motion and a second to approve the amendment to the TIF budget. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Will, what are we increasing it to?
$60,500.
From 50?
From 50.
Yes.
All right. Next item is consideration of TIF application at 1339 Walnut Street. That is in here. That is building on the corner of 14th and Walnut. TNT Hair Salon is owned by James Chambers Family Trust. Looks like he's going to tuck point the complete front of the building, fix cracks, some spots in the back, replace some brick, and fix any loose brick. By an estimated project cost of $16,500.
Need a motion?
We have a motion by Alderman McComb.
There's not a business in there now, is there? That's where,
TNT Hair Salon.
Hair
oh, that is the corner one.
Yep.
He owns several of those there, doesn't he?
He owns that
He owns
corner
that-
building. It's got several
Yeah,
retail spaces
businesses.
in
I
there.
know that where Daniel Dean's was originally, he owned that one and still does, I'm assuming. So I didn't realize which one
I
this
believe it's
was.
from the corner all the way down to the Liberty, I believe.
Yeah,
I think so,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Liberty?
Yes.
Yeah,
Second.
thank you.
We have a second from Alderman Glass. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion will carry. Next item is consideration of TIF application at 2039 Walnut Street. That's Whipple Boys. Owner of the property is Tim Raymond. Looks like two-phase project to reseal and restripe the parking lot and replace the AC unit. Estimated project cost of $9,000. And so here's a question I have, and I don't have an issue with it, but like, so projects like that, how do those fit within the TIF district? If that, I mean, will they get funds back from that on any reassessment? Because that's probably not going to change an assessment on the,
It's probably not going to change in assessment. I think, one of the things with the new structure of the TIF program.
that won't matter as much as
Right.
they get up to a certain dollar.
And, the hope is, obviously, that you're just stabilizing.
Trying to get people to incentivize improvements to
Right.
the property.
Make a motion.
A motion from Alderman Cone,
Second.
second from Alderman Gladden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion is carried. All right, last item is consideration of financing HVAC upgrade at Sally Logan Public Library. Tell you what I know, and then I will go. We have some members from the library. Richard will probably. So, this Star Library came to the bank when to finance upgrades to their HVAC system. When we received title work, the abstract told us that they would like to see, because the city is the owner of that building of record, that they would like to see the note go under the city's name instead of the library's name, and told us to speak to our attorney before we went any farther. We reached out to the bank attorney, and he said the same thing, because the city is the owner of record. I have mixed opinions on that, because we have in the past done financing for a separate entity owns the property, and we get the owner to sign the mortgage, not necessarily the note, but the owner signs the mortgage, the borrower signs the note. But advice from our turn that down or go straight from that very often. Then reached out to find out some things that had to do with the Library Act, and I don't know if we were ever able to get the original. We went several different conversations on different things, but if you want to start there and.
Scott Maloney, where the city accepted ownership under the will of Sally Logan, which was by a resolution in 1936, has certain restrictions in the will that it just be used for library purposes. If it's not anymore, then it's to go to, I'm not sure what home it would go to if it ever was not. That's the deed where, other than the parking, there's the parking lot areas that were acquired by the city later.
And that lot is owned by the library, not the city, correct? There is one parcel that listed as owner and not the city, but the parcel with the building on it, I believe, is owned.
I only know what the title commitment says. The title commitment shows City of Murphysboro own it all.
Okay.
So that just flipped over after the original library burned when I was a young person.
No.
Remember? Did that flip over to?
No, when it was originally deeded over from when that house was.
It was when the house, that was before the fire of the original one, but we still own the new one? Yeah, so that flipped to us, even though it wasn't the same original building.
Well, there's no doubt we need to keep that up.
Because the way
Well,
the
I
library
get that,
is
but
set
is that-
under the Local Library Act. So
Okay.
even though the library has its own board, does its own functioning, the
Sure.
library is still part of the city.
Yes, I knew
Way
that,
it's set up.
yeah. I didn't know if there was something that needed to be fire of
This real
the
estate is
home
owned.
that was there, and we built a new one.
Do you want the city to sign the loan, or?
So that was the bank's position based on conversation with the abstract originally and our attorney. If there is a different position, and that's why I went to Richard for more
And he
information.
talked about the bank's attorney when he's saying.
Right, the bank's
The
attorney.
bank's attorney.
Right.
What Scott Maloney shows is what will be needed from the title company's aspect is a resolution from both the library board approving the borrowing, approving of the mortgage, and setting forth who its officers will be who sign the loan. And then it wants the same from the city of Murphysboro, approving the borrowing, approving the mortgage, and approving, who's going to sign it, which for the city, it's the mayor and city clerk. For the library, it would be, I don't know if you call your presiding officer, chairman, or president, I can't remember, and secretary, who would sign those documents.
So from the city, we would be making a resolution that
No, it would authorize the city to do it.
City
We
to
need
borrow.
Procedurally, the local library act has certain procedures that are followed that authorize the mortgage of property. Basically, and Zach, I'm assuming this is Zach has sent me minutes from the board's meeting, so to see how everything has progressed and in nice discussions with the WJ, I know everything's in line to do it.
Right.
What would be needed from the library board would be a resolution that would set for, and I can help draft, what would be needed by both the library board and the city as resolution wise, would be a resolution setting forth what the library's plan is, what its estimated cost will be, that this would be, I know it's planned to be a loan that will be less than 20 years in mortgage. There's certain value requirements it can't exceed. I know based on the appraisal doesn't exceed those amounts. The library board has already put it out to bids and accepted the lowest bidder. Those things will need to be set forth in the library board's resolution, and then authorizing the board to enter into the loan, the mortgage, who's going to do it, and then submitting that to the city, and then the city needs to adopt a resolution accepting that plan and their resolution, and then also approving the borrowing of money, the mortgaging of the property, and these will be the people who sign the documentation.
So then will the city on the note on that as well?
Now, that would be up to the bank.
Okay.
I
mean, from my opinion, I am okay if the city is.
I guess two. What the
And the
bank
title.
requires and then what the city
The
requires.
city requires.
The city will need to be on the mortgage.
Correct.
Because the city owns the property. But in general, in the borrowing scenario, the bank, or excuse me, the library, because I know the library will be paying from their funds this note and mortgage. The library board could sign the note.
Which I'm okay with because we underwrote the library was gonna make
And
that
then just
payment.
the city
And-
signing off on the mortgage.
So I'm okay with that, and that we have done several like that with a different owner, property, and borrower that signs the note in several instances before, so.
In the resolution, it will state that
The city
they will be
will have
responsible for the
library
payments.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, I don't
it
know.
depends on who's signing the note.
Gotcha.
If it's required that the city sign it also, then the city would ultimately be on the hook.
Well, and then, and what that does from our end too is right now, the library has no borrowings, so the aggregate balance based on asking to borrow did not need to get board approval from the bank board. If we were then to put it under the city umbrella with the city borrowing money, it would have to go to the bank board for board approval because of what the city has in borrowings from the bank currently.
Well, I don't
So-
think this council would let the library
I
close
don't
down.
believe so.
The one thing I will say is, keep in mind when it comes to the taxes. Well, first of all, do we have any idea what the debt service might be annually for this?
I mean, it's $202,000 note on a 3-year arm, 15-year amortization, initial rate 4.57%. And let me see.
I can't do that in my.
I'll do it, I got a calculator right here. So about $1,500 a month.
So about 18,000 a year.
Yeah, about between $18,000 and $19,000.
Excess, besides the fact that, we are the ultimate backstop against a default, I guess, is, their tax levy falls into ours. So, we get X amount of dollars as a total tax levy, so, the more theirs is, or the more the police or fire pension levies are, then that means, it squeezes how much we can get for our corporate levy, unless, we could play the game of doing the 4.9% increase without having to have a referendum, or not a referendum, but a hearing. But if we go higher than that in any given year, we have to have that hearing, and we haven't had to do that in quite a while. But so there will be some effect. I mean, in essence, if they have to increase their levy by $18,000 over the next so many years, that means it'd be $18,000 that we may not get. So there will be a backdoor cost to the city in that respect, I suppose. But again, if $18,000 is the only effect, we could raise our overall levy by $18,000, probably well under the 4.9%. So I mean, but I want you to be able to understand that, to understand how that works. So,
And there's obviously that this would ever happen, but the city being the owner, if there was default on the note, the city would be in line to lose that property. If we weren't willing to step in and pay that, which I'm sure we would be willing to step in and pay, if that ever got to a point where the library couldn't service that debt, we would lose the property if we didn't make that decision, so at that time.
Question. Who was the low bidder?
A&W.
So then, do we need to get with the library board on their resolution and then vote it on back to us? Vote on at that point? We don't need to vote on anything specific tonight. And prior to our next meeting, which is, when's our next meeting?
16.
Next Tuesday.
Ours is the
Week from the night, isn't it?
Ours is the
Yeah.
16th, we moved them back.
We did move them back? Okay, so it's
Oh, did it?
Oh, did we? I did.
I suspect we
I
will.
suspect we will.
It's on the agenda under the mayor.
Yeah.
Does that sound, do you guys have anything additional you want to question or add to that? Nope. Is that okay with you guys then? We will get with Richard. Zach, will you be in contact with Richard and we'll get that resolution drawn up then?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Zach?
Zach?
I'm sorry, I had multiple people talking.
That's all right.
What was that, Chief?
How much we've already paid.
Okay, yeah, we have already paid approximately over $100,000 towards the cost, the final cost,
Okay.
from our own savings.
So,
Cover all of this.
Right.
We didn't go into this like, we
No.
didn't know where funds were coming from. And, and I've been talking to you, but in talking to Daryl prior to this, that 15 year, we probably have the funds that we can pay it off in 7 or 8 years.
Right. And I believe him and I had that conversation too, that the plan was, not necessarily for the full term, but if that option is out there, if necessary.
200 they've already paid. It's 200 above what they've already.
I served on the library board for some period of time, and I still remember those days whenever there was a question of, can it still be fixed? So obviously, that time has arrived.
As of, when was it? Was it March, when we no longer had heat in the building?
Correct.
No heat in the building.
Do you have air conditioning?
Yes, have to have air conditioning because that would
Right.
be too much damage to the
Yeah,
the
right.
The cold lesson, but there was no heat in that building for employees and whatever.
That's tough.
Frequently, the air conditioner has gone down in the last several years
Yes.
as it's at the end of its lifespan. A lot of times, these are kind of like, temporary fixes that are very expensive and, kind of trying to put a Band-Aid on something to limp it to,
Temporary fix to permanent problem.
to fall. So
the last few years, it's become a more pressing issue as time's going on.
Yes.
200,000, that's in addition to the 100,000 or so you've paid already, or?
Yes.
So it was a $300,000 unit base, or a job, basically,
Yeah.
and you've paid 100 of it already. I just didn't understand if you were, if it was taking 100,000 off of that, or if it was already off of that.
No, that bid was what, 300 and?
Oh, and that's okay, round to 300's fine.
And then in addition to that, we had 60,000 to the architects and all that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That is in addition to that. So
So-
out of that 365,000 or whatever, we have paid 100,000.
Okay.
I mean, are they replacing ductwork and everything, or is it the actual units, or is it?
None of the actual ductwork inside you replaced is all still adequate. It's the air conditioner condenser unit, and then the boiler, which went out in
So
March.
it's the boiler
A lot of
also.
the components of in there, replacing the air conditioning controllers and the pipes and stuff.
Okay. You guys have, is it like a radiator heating up there, or was it forced air also?
It is forced air.
It just seemed like a lot of money to me when I saw that bid, but, I mean, it is a fairly substantial
Yeah, I mean,
building.
and if you guys got the bids and that was the lowest one, I mean, you can't argue that it's the wrong price, you know, if.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so then, I guess at this point, Zach, if you and Rich will get together and get that resolution prior to your next meeting, and then you guys can vote on your resolution, and then we will get that on our agenda to vote on your resolution at our next meeting, and then we should be able to get stuff wrapped up on the bank's end fairly quickly after that.
And I'll check with review WJ to make sure we have everything in there.
Right.
And the same with Scott Moore.
Okay, yeah, and I'll get with Scott to make sure that his opinion, you know, and like I said, I was one of my processors that had the original conversation with Scott Maloney, that this is what they're saying we need, because she was helping take over some of Daryl's stuff that he was working on prior to his retirement, so, but I'll get with him and make sure that that's okay, because like I said, we've done that several times in the past where we list a different grantor than we do. I don't have any issue with this one. All right. Does anybody have any further questions on that? All right. Thank you, guys. Is there any public comment under budget and finance?
So we didn't need any motion coming out of that, Richard?
I was just going to
Okay.
Next meeting, agreement. For official action.
Okay,
As long as I've got instructions to.
An hour later.
More paper than.
Well,
All right, that takes us to Building and Grounds chaired by Mr. Mike Austin. Mike?
Thank you. Give the council an update here real quick before we go into old business about the solar project. We had been asked by a couple council members to get numbers and comparing, and I want the council to know that we are still in the process of getting numbers sent back to us to where we can compare them to the original that we had from the group that made the presentation. So it's not off the burner and it's not forgotten. We're just waiting to get something worth reviewing, so.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep. Under old business, we have an update on the windows at the Senior Citizen Center. I want the council to know that Darren is on vacation again. And I want you to know that he understands that once he gets back, to take a look and see what will happen over there and how much it would end up costing. No need to move it to another agenda. We will keep it everybody knows But as soon as he's able to get back and get some numbers to us, then I'll make sure that the council knows, but there's no reason to keep it on the agenda. We're looking at trying to get the work done before fall.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing. And is there any public comments regarding building and grounds? Hearing none, Mayor, we can move out of building.
Thank you, Mike. It takes us to community old business. Under new business, we have the consideration of placement of flag retirement box at City Hall. I believe most of you were here at the last meeting when the young man made a presentation, his Eagle Scout project. Looked like a very good project to drop off flags that were needed to be retired appropriately. So
We need a motion to do that.
I believe we do.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. That placement, all by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any public comment under community relations? Hearing none, we'll move out of that to public improvement. Chair, Mr. Don Blanton. Don?
Thank you, sir. There is no old business. Under new business, we have 3 chapters to approve tonight. Taking up chapter 1, there is a correction to the revisions made on the cover sheet. It says 1-3-48, and that should be -47, which really doesn't affect anything inside the document. The item for discussion, Division 3 City Treasurer, we're recommending that we delete the requirement that the city treasurer be elected. It will be up to...
Have we ever had an elected city treasurer?
Yes, it's in here. Since we don't have a city treasurer, we wanted to leave that there in, but the duties of the city treasurer are already being carried out by present staff. So we just wanted to make it a decision of the mayor and the city council to have a treasurer.
And I looked at state statute, and communities under a certain population, I can't remember what it was, maybe 25,000 or something, are given this option. Communities larger than those populations are sort of remanded by state statute that they have an elected city treasurer. Richard Blake, I know you looked at a couple things in regard to items or anything you feel compelled to share.
Well, it can be the current city code makes it an elected position. Everyone knows it hasn't been for many years, haven't had a treasurer for many years, haven't elected one or appointed one. But it is required by state statute to have a treasurer. By our city code, we can make it that it's an appointed position. I know Sandra was going to look back and reach out to who she knew to have been the last city treasurer.
It was Jim Chambers about 30 years ago.
Well, and she had mentioned another name. I can't remember. I just know the name. So it wasn't Jim.
Yeah. Joyce Caldero, I believe, was the last one. And then when she became
clerk.
Frank Riley left as city clerk, and Joyce moved over to that position. I think the city elected not to replace the treasurer.
So, when we last discussed it, Sandra could not recall when it happened between Sandra and myself. She's been here longer than everyone else. So, I guess a question would be, we don't have the language in it right now, so it's specified it's going to be appointed. So I don't know if that part you want to wait to approve. There's also a separate salary set for the treasurer, $5,000. I don't know if that stays in. As Tom said, other people have been performing the duties of the treasurer for many years.
Did you say it is optional or it is required?
It's required to have a treasurer. The treasurer does not have to be.
Even with the size of the city?
The city of Murphysboro can make it an appointed position.
Versus an elected?
It's interesting to me, and I don't want to belabor the meeting, but that the county clerk, over these years or whatever, if that was never changed on our side, like, who at the courthouse makes the decision all of a sudden that we're just not gonna put it on the ballot for city treasurer? I mean.
I'm curious to how it happened.
Yeah, that
I
would
mean,
be
if nobody
interesting.
turned in any petitions or anything to run for the position,
Right.
how, they wouldn't know to put that on there, I would
I
imagine.
believe the council took a vote to eliminate the position.
Really?
Well, anyway,
It's more than 15 years ago.
Big boys 1 year, if they ever got out the big books.
it sounds like to me, though, that we could make a motion to amend the specific language Don's recommending, which is to eliminate the elected portion of that now. We want to revisit the upcoming meeting
Yeah.
concerning other ramifications. Do we want to just appoint Scott or Sandra or somebody to that position who's already doing that job, or what?
It cannot be Scott.
Yeah.
Because he does not reside in the city.
In order to be appointed, you have to be someone who's a qualified elected.
Oh, okay.
Within the city.
Well,
Scott looks real broken up about that. too.
Yeah.
I do
I
have
said he
one
was real
other
broken up
thing.
about that too.
Richard, if you would look on page 12. Okay, starting at the top, it's A, B, and then it goes to D, and that should be changed to a C. Okay? So I wanted to note that correction, so whenever, any other discussions of chapter 1? It's only 50 pages long. If there's not, I look for a vote.
I'd
Somebody
make a
to-
motion that we approve those changes. Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We have a motion second to
Excuse me.
approve chapter 1.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carries, thank you. Now we go to chapter 3. The thing I want to point out is we spent a couple sessions with our animal control officer, Tincher, who had a lot of input. There were redundancies and questions, and we were able to get all of those aligned. I do want to point out, Richard, on page 3-6, there's a typo. Under 3-1-18, humane care, the last line in the first paragraph, it should be may be given to any qualified licensed retailer. So, with that correction. Is there any
Say
further
that
discussion?
again, unwanted animals may be given to,
Given to instead of given any.
oh, okay,
Given to any qualified licensed.
okay, thanks.
Any other questions on chapter 3?
I'll make a motion to approve chapter 3.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Second. Favor of approving chapter 3.
Aye.
Okay. Chapter 4, boards and commissions. We've removed Article 5 and Article 6, Human Relations Commission and Harbor Commission. These are old groups that have not met in forever. We changed the membership of 4-1-2 of the Plan Commission from 9 members to 7 members, just to make it a little easier to recruit people to be there. Step down there. Are there any other questions or comments on chapter 4? Looking for a second.
Second.
Have a motion and second for Chapter 4. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody. Any public comment on public improvement? Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Don. That takes us to Public Works, chaired by Mr. Gary McComb. Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. We done missed one auction on maybe getting rid of this 64-year-old. We'd like to declare it as surplus property, and one guy that might be interested in it, I don't know who's down there, this guy's got all the parts of right.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's some farmers in it.
Most well-organized junkyard I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's amazing.
That covers the whole town.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just, not too many people's gonna want this thing, and that's, if they've already got one, they'll use it for parts.
You don't want to use it in parades?
Have any idea what this thing would be worth?
The code vehicle.
Yeah, it'd be a code vehicle.
I mean, you can scrap it and get so much money out of it, but, I would think we could, if we declared surplus, that we can maybe get over that guy down there,
Okay.
see what he would give for it.
Sure.
And he may not be around.
Right.
One of the guys that works over there in the water department said that he might be interested in buying it for, on the farm. So I don't know, I mean, we just, but I'd entertain a motion to declare it surplus property.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Is there any public comment on Public Works? Hearing none, Mayor, we can move out of there. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Gary. That takes the Public Safety chaired by Mr. John Urbis. John?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no old business, and we have no new business. Is there any public comment on public safety?
I just have one quick question. Obviously, this week is our 4th of July celebration at Riverside Park, and Chief, I know several years ago, we had some issues with folks, sitting off our street at the entrance to the park. I assume we're going to have additional auxiliary and things available for coverage of different.
I'll have almost everybody out for that time frame. I've already talked to Regina from that. We'll be out that night again in case we have any trouble with them. She makes it clear to them. She also was sending letters out a couple of weeks ago letting them know not to be shooting flowers. So
Thank you.
Not the 4th, correct?
That's Friday, yes.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. We can move on.
Takes us to Personnel Chair by Ms. Barbara Hughes. And Barb, before we get into this, obviously we don't have any old business, but I don't think that we have the full tonight, particularly Ms. Jackson was the one who had asked that this be, I think Mr. Austin had asked her to be put back on, but I just don't think we have enough people here that if we're going to do, I think it needs to be done with more than we have in attendance tonight. It's my.
Does that need, and Richard maybe answer that, does that need to be put on the ballot at the next election for a full-time mayor?
No, it would not have to be.
The salary either?
The salary will have to be established 180 days prior to the end of the term. The
Has to be
current
done by
mayor's term
May
ends April 3rd, 25.
And it would go in.
A change in salary will need to be taking place prior to November 1st.
It has to be like the end of October for the May 25 election.
Right.
Couple of people, and they thought, that.
Well, you could put it in question. But, the way that would function is then it would be essentially 4 years later. It wouldn't be this coming term, it would have to be one following after that, because just the way the timing of it would go.
Shall we go back to the agenda, and we'll say there's no old business under personnel?
Sure.
And you are asking, Mayor, that it be tabled at this point and put on the agenda?
At the next meeting or at some upcoming meeting.
Okay, so
Could
let's,
could I make a comment just real quickly
Sure.
about that?
absolutely.
Just so the council understands, if we were to make that mayor's position full-time, we could always stipulate that we would review it again in 4 years, correct, Richard? And make a decision on the following 4 years, as long as it's 180 days before.
If you're changing the salary, it could be, and it can be increased in meeting those
But-
timeframes by law.
but-
And decrease it also within those time.
Yeah, but during that 4-year period, then that would allow us an opportunity to evaluate and to take a look if we want to continue with a full-time position or if we want to move it back to part-time, correct?
He's just talking about a salary amount, not
Because
whether
we
it's
can't
full-time or
dictate how
part-time.
much time a person spends in that office. All we can dictate is how much we.
Position.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Right.
Yes.
So there is no.
Right. But we can review that in 4 years.
Yeah.
If we-
Yes,
if we-
you could, yeah, as long as you got it 180 days before.
Before the next election.
election, you could review it every 4 years.
I don't think Murphysboro's ever had a full-time paid mayor, have it? You know, Richard? I know there's a young lady out there,
Appleton was.
her dad wasn't full-time, I think he's still running the business.
I was gonna say,
and-
he was there full-time though, I think. I think that Sid was,
He'd show up if there was a water main break at 4 in the morning. He was out there with the plumbers doing his business.
Smoking his cigar.
okay, so I think we're going to have the minutes say that we're going to put that on the next agenda.
That's fine.
That we would like to have have the whole council here at the time. Okay? At that point, informational-wise, well, this is my own personal opinion, but I really truly think that there needs to be some studies done on what, and perhaps someone has done it, but if we had a committee that would look at cities or small municipalities of this size, see what they're paying them, and if they're full-time versus part-time, whether that makes any difference or not. If we could have that, we could make our decisions a lot. We had some information about what other cities were doing. I think also, and I would like Sandra to be here because Sandra works one-on-one with Mayor, and she can tell us more than any of us on this board about how much time she needs with him and if it is enough at this point.
We can contact the Illinois Municipal League, they'll have that.
All that, yes.
We've had that in front of us before.
I think we did that several years ago, WJ, you and I can't remember who else, we went through this before, and we got all that information at that time, but it may be changed now, I don't know. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I have all, various southern Illinois beaches and, like Marion's at 50K, obviously they're a much larger community.
Yeah.
Heron's at 50K.
Well, I mean, their
Hartwell's at-
councilmen make $25,000 too, but they're not
Right,
councilmen,
and so
they're called.
it's really kind of, interesting, like over the hundreds of years of the state of Illinois or whatever, like you have mayor of $2,000 a year, okay? And then you have a mayor in the executive assessor making $200 a year.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Yeah.
And so like, it's a wildly like broad.
Well, I think we have to compare it to,
2 or 3 months ago, was how many towns in the state of Illinois with less than 8,000 people had a full-time paid mayor,
Yeah, I
I'd
don't know
like
the
to know.
answer to that, but I mean,
Yeah,
I can
I'd
try
like
to
to know
find
that
it.
too.
I mean, El Chester, probably.
Maybe, I haven't looked at their,
I drove down there in 2 weeks, took the
Probably
great granddaughter,
get some gas
and I
across
can't
the road.
remember what the,
that's it.
Well-
We don't have to belabor this. It's just something that I would want all of you to think
Sure.
about how much study we want to go into this before we just arbitrarily vote on it.
No, I agree completely. I don't want any vote without everybody essentially that they want to have in front of them, because, it can't be about me.
I get that.
This vote cannot be about
If it
Will
was,
Stevens.
we know it would all
Like,
go, how it would go.
It needs to be about whoever,
Yeah.
would be
I agree.
the mayor, because I could get hit by a truck tomorrow,
Well,
or the day
Or you
after.
get up and an airplane can fall on your house.
So, it's a matter of whether, you think pursuing more grant money, timely and responding to more timely.
I think that it also is, not necessarily that, but the time involved with the everyday, day-to-day duties that you have. I mean, you probably spend 40 hours a week on it, along with your other job, and I understand that. What I don't know is, do we need that? I don't have any
Well,
idea.
and that's the question for the, obviously. And so I just feel like Angela and say about this particular matter.
I would be here for that.
Anyway,
well, if you're all okay with just holding it over, we'll put it on the next one. Is there any public comment or employee comment on personnel? Hearing none, Mayor, we can get out of it.
all right. I don't have mayor's report this evening. I would like to, and I promise to keep it brief, and we can take an executive session without it being on the agenda, but I do need to counsel in on something informational in an exec. So anyway, I don't have anything.
Change
Well,
it
don't we
16
need
to
to vote
30.
on changing the meeting date?
Oh, excuse me. Agenda, it's not on there.
Yeah.
To move the meeting date 16th and 30th. Is that the right dates?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Council member request to go to the
But I do want to commend the fire department. We had a fire at the end of South 15th. It'll be 2 weeks this weekend. It was on. Yeah. Anyway, it's a real rude awakening to wake up to all those fire trucks in your driveway, and it's. Thank you. We're there within moments of being called, and they really had everything under control in an hour and a half or less. And have we not had the department that we have, I truly believe that that house would have been completely lost. And it's in the historic preservation area, but it's an Frank Lloyd Wright house, and I would just hate to lose that. There's very few communities that have that kind of architecture in their community and in their historic reservation area. Also, I did find his pieces, and I did put them back together.
Not mine, but.
Mr. Murphy's. And I did put them back together, but it was 2 days later before I found them, so he went around not seeing very well for a few days, but I'm glad that he has a backup now. The other thing that I would like to at some point have put on the agenda is the fact that that's about a 2-inch line that goes to that fire hydrant at the end of South 15th. And they, besides using the pumper truck thing, they had to go all the way to Oak and maybe to Edith to get water to South 15th. And there is a fire hydrant at the end of my driveway and across the street from the house that had the fire that is not usable if any of those homes, again, catch on fire. I think we really need to look at doing something to that because it is the historic preservation area and there's a lot of old homes there.
And he says a 2-inch line.
I think it is. It's right at the end of South.
Aged 4-inch line.
Well, that could be. All I know is even when Steve Swafford, when we had you remember the big explosion we had down there? They had to go all the way to Edith then because there was not enough it wasn't big enough to handle the 3 houses that caught on fire from that gas explosion. So I think it's something that we really, really, really need to look at, is down in that area, what those fires are. Steve said he used to have like a list of, and he may still have passed it on, of where he had to go if a fire happened in this area, where he had to go to get one that was big enough to put that fire out. And they used every bit of hose that they had,
Yeah, we
by the
laid
way.
1,000 foot of
Yeah.
5-inch underground to get water to the fire. Or they did. I was.
And my house didn't catch on fire,
That's
and
how
I was
good
still
it
to
is.
death. So, anyway, it's something I would like to have put on the agenda at some point to look at.
Okay.
Thank you again, Steve.
Yep.
They did a good job. They did a real good job.
Mr. Urbis?
I just want to thank the council member who joined us for the unveiling of the billboard. It was a fun event, and thanks to Darren, we called him, contacted me, said the grass. I called Darren, and he got a guy down there to mow it in about 30 minutes.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, it all came together very well, and Mr. Manwaring was described to me as being like Spider-Man.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, thanks for that.
River loved it. Todd took River down. I was out of town, and Todd said, he knew more people there than I. Yeah, he's a king.
Suggestions, and River came up to me afterwards, he goes, you need to put a light on that sign.
And the light is actually being put in
I thought
as
so.
we speak.
I will tell him that. Todd said, he said to John, you can't see it at nighttime.
And I want to thank donating their labor.
That is very nice, yes.
Mr. Austin?
I have nothing.
Clerk Hunziker?
And nothing, thank you.
Mr. Pittman?
4th of July coming up, I hope everybody should. With more.
Fair enough. All right.
Well, there's something that I'd like for us to look into. We got a lot of people with gardens in town, and one guy had an electric fence around him. He was told by code enforcement he had to take it down. The deal panels and everything, these people need to put up a small electric fence, but they're told they can't do it, to keep the ground whole. And, that's for us to look at it and see if we get okay for somebody to put the electric fences up to protect their gardens and their flowers. Either that or open up bow season in town.
There are some places that have inside city limit deer hunts, but of course, the first toddler that wanders into the electric fence, of course, they're going to have that parent in asking us to change it back to the other way, so.
That's just something that several people have asked me about, and I told them I'd bring it up.
Oh, there.
Okay.
And Chief, where was Murphy's safety glasses?
Within about
safety
2 minutes.
Well, was it his regular glasses that got broke?
Just like-
Yeah.
He didn't have safety glasses?
Prescription safety glasses. No, it was his regular glasses that he has to use to drive with, and then he got out of the truck. I don't know if he went to take them off to put his mask on, and they got knocked off in the driveway or what, but.
No, I just kidding.
Yeah, he did, they were distance ones.
He done an excellent job down there handling the speech and everything else.
Thank you.
He done a real good job. Nothing at this time, thank you, Mayor.
All right, Mr. Gladden?
Just really grateful for Spider-Man, because we would not have gotten that cover completely off without you being able to do that, because I remember the day that I could have done that, but
Uncovering, so he covered it, and then had to
Yeah.
help us uncover it. So, yes, thank you, Brian.
Attorney Blake?
Nothing to report.
Nothing, thank you.
Chief McBride?
Nothing, thanks.
Chief Ellemeyer?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Manwaring?
Nothing, thanks.
Ms. Volley? Mr. Lee? Mr. Gladson?
Nothing, thanks.
I
All
thought
right.
that was good.
I thought somebody. May adjourn, or I may have an executive session.
Thank you, Library Board, for being here.
Yes, thank you.